Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Super excited to be talking about all things AI, Silicon Valley, art, music, history. Very blessed, grateful to have Dr. Piero Scaruffi joining us on the show. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm very, very excited. You are a role model to me and so many others. You are a polymath. I love calling myself a polymath, especially an aspiring polymath over the time. I have another 40 years of knowledge to collect before I can properly call myself a polymath. Piero is a polymath. He got a PhD in math. He also is a 30-time author. He is also the founder of Laser Talks, and he is the founder of Last Festival. And I'm super excited to be talking to Piero about all this crazy, awesome knowledge that you've been synthesizing and disseminating. So let's jump into everything from a big history perspective. We like doing that a lot. It's very exciting. So, all right, we find ourselves as stewards of Earth after a long period of evolution. And what is your polymathic take on what the current state of humanity is?
Well, what everybody sees, okay, first of all, let's not talk about politics, which I feel sometimes is just a distraction, because you get entangled in these stories of Putin and Trump and Xi, and you forget there's something else that drives the history of the world. So what everybody notices is that this is a century, this was and is the two centuries of science and technology, right? We are more and more surrounded by machines. I took a picture a few months ago in China, 6 a.m. when there's nobody around. I was in the subway, and I bought the ticket from a machine. I bought food from a machine. I bought the drink from a machine. There was a machine that takes pictures. There was a machine that sells toys. Then to get into the subway, there was a machine checking my ticket. Another machine checked my luggage, and then the subway itself these days is a robot. So I was completely surrounded by machines in China with very few human beings around, right? So that's the world we live in. So that's been the big change. And it really starts with electricity. We forget this was a major invention when we started using electricity just about a century ago, right? The Edison bulb is a little older than a century, but cities got electrified really a century ago. And that's the world we live in, the electrical world that gave us the computer, the smartphone, all these apps that you use, but also air conditioning that makes it possible to live in extremely hot places. And then it gave us also pollution and climate change. So everything you can think of recently, even politics, most of the arguments are really driven by technology and science. So for better, for worse, medicine, we live a lot longer. Life expectancy a century ago, what was it in the United States? 40, 41, I don't remember. Yeah, now it's 80, doubled, and we have designer babies now, so that's really, from a global point of view, that's what has changed compared with the previous centuries, right?
I love it. Such a good synthesis. Taking us into this perspective of 200 years ago, not even having cars, not even having photography, of course not having airplanes, computers, and internet, and of course now being at this train station and doing everything with machines is a huge transition, massive transition. And life expectancy being increased, this longer amount of time that we have on Earth to potentially do more creative endeavoring of sorts and have more experiences and emotions. It's very exciting. So, okay, on this synthesis of reality, you're identifying this trajectory that we have with engaging with machines. And also, of course, if we're going to talk, 200 years of life expectancy, we can also talk population as well, from just a billion or so to 7.8.
8 probably now.
Yeah. So with that hockey stick in population, and now with machines everywhere, where do you see this melting pot of machine technology and human existence molding to?
Yeah, and so again, there's an obvious pro. There's been a lot of benefit to the well-being of people. And it's sometimes we forget, we demonstrate against some technology, but we forget we need it. We desperately need it. And starting from mechanics, this roof is not collapsing because somebody used technology to build it properly. And buildings as elevators, you don't need to walk up the stairs, air conditioning and so on, heating. So there's obvious benefits there, and then there's obvious problems. So I think where we go next is really about how we manage these things. Cities have become, well, first of all, a lot of people moved from the countryside to the city. Why? Because most of the technology is in the city. Yeah. We say it in different ways, but actually what we really mean, most of the technology is in the city. Hospitals, train stations, so on. And so now we have these big cities that really summarize all the benefits and the issues. And I think the future will be about designing better cities and better living in the cities.
Yes.
And I'm very worried when we focus only on the technology part, which sometimes we do even unconsciously. Even people who are very humanitarian and who are very concerned about the spirit, not just the matter. But then at the end of the day, we tend to be very materialistic in the way we design cities. So that's also why I don't want people to lose sight of what make humans humans.
Yes.
And humanities.
Yes.
That's why it's called humanities. Okay. Technology starts with tech. And humanity starts with human. There's a reason. Yeah. So sometimes we forget these other aspects. So the future is very challenging, but it's mostly I'm optimistic. I mean, Steven Pinker wrote a book where he showed
Better Angels of Our Nature.
That we are actually more peaceful than in the past. Does that mean the future will be even more peaceful? Well, it's up to us. It's always up to us. We have weapons of mass destruction. We have climate change. We pollute the world at an incredibly higher rate.
That's right.
If you travel to poor countries, you see it better.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
In developed countries, we're very good at hiding pollution, recycling, which actually is another way to create different kind of pollution. So challenges, but the solution for these things, I think I'm also worried that when we exaggerate the danger that comes from technology and science, that's always been the case. That's always been the case. We invented technology and we killed with that technology. In fact, a lot of technology was built during wars, which is another topic nobody wants to talk about.
That's right.
But a lot of the things we use today, including the computer, GPS, that was invented either during World War II or during the Cold War. So technology can be used for many different ways, in many different ways. But mostly we invented it because we didn't want to live in cold and dark caves, as we used to not that long ago.
Piero, I love talking to you so much because you speak like a true synthesizer of these crucial junctions in human evolution, synthesizing them, making them relatable for other people. I love the way you storytell. It's very interesting that you point out that these next 7 billion humans and the machines that we've piled on to Earth have caused these disruptions as we've done things like anthropogenic climate influence, like we've had with the way that we now, technology versus humanities. So actually understanding the heart-centric thinking, the human empathy and care that we have for each other in this union on Earth, actually making sure that that humans can carry that and pass it down to their children and whatnot. Okay. So I feel I want to ask you about that as prior to this next movement in the conversation. What can we do best about that heart-centric thinking, that empathizing? How do we scale our ethics and our collective to being all 8 billion humans?
Unfortunately, that depends on what your vision of a good society is. And again, So what I don't like, but that's my personal opinion, is that sometimes we see too much the material aspect of society. I do want people to live longer. I do want everybody to have access to health care. I do want people to have heating and air conditioning so you can live a comfortable life. But that's all material stuff. And I don't think that's what makes humans humans. You know, humans to me are also, and maybe mainly, Homer, Shakespeare, Monet, and so on, Beethoven, and so on. If you remove all these people
Charles Aznavour.
Charles Aznavour, okay, for the for the fan of French chansonnier. So if we remove all of this from the history of humankind, what is left is robots.
Damn.
So that's something we do. So in the world, in the history of humans, in whatever you want to call it, there's always been these two forces. So there's a force that wants to structure society. Okay, publicity. I have a book titled Intelligence is Not Artificial, which was originally about AI, demystifying AI. Then I started realizing that as people talk about machines taking over, which is not happening anytime soon, but they confuse two issues. I mean, we have more and more machines, but even before machines, even without machines, it's we humans who like to structure things. We have traffic lights because we want traffic to be ordered. We want it to be easy
Other
to drive.
places in the world don't have traffic lights, and they have their own experience with
Right.
that. Yes.
Right, so we structure society, and we invented so many rules and regulations. In fact, people who come from totalitarian countries to the United States, sometimes they say, you guys have more rules than in my country. Why? Because in this country, you can decide if he wears a seatbelt or not. Here, it's mandatory, period. Okay? Here, we have rules and regulations for everything. I hike mountains. When you hike a mountain, they give you a little piece of paper that has all the rules and regulations for walking on the mountain. And somebody from a developing country will laugh. I mean, you have rules to walk on the mountain. You need a permit to hike a mountain in this country. So there's this force in society that wants to structure life a lot. Forget about machines. All the things I mentioned right now don't imply that you need a machine to do that. The machine comes later. Because you enforce so many rules and regulations, then it becomes natural to say, why don't we have a machine enforce it? Why don't we have a machine doing it? Okay? So there's a force in society that wants to create what I call the vast algorithmic bureaucracy.
That's a good word.
In the new edition of the book,
the VAB,
I emphasize this aspect because we blame machines for things that we humans want to have with or without machines. You know, we just want to have rules and regulations. Why? It makes life easier, you know. So there's one force is that force. But I think if that force wins, what we create is the vast algorithmic bureaucracy where there's no difference between a machine and a human being. We lost Beethoven and Shakespeare and so on, okay? So my personal very limited, very small mission in this, movement is to remind people that music is great, and painting is great, and sculpture is great. Comic books are great. Video games are great. Rock music is great. All these things. I don't want to lose them. Personal opinion. Okay? If you like a society where we behave like robots, we're getting there. Okay? When you call, I was a kid. I was calling somebody, some service, there was a human being. And then I would get annoyed because this person is in a bad mood, I need something done or whatever, we yell at each other, whatever. That was a human interaction. We solved the problem by making it all automated. There are rules. You call and the first thing is press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, 1. Press 1 for this, press 1, 2, and so on, right? And eventually you get to something that tells you we're currently closed, call back later, or whatever. So in all of this, you're slowly becoming a machine. You're interacting with machines and you are asked to be a machine, okay? So I don't like that. Personal opinion, okay? I don't like that.
Whoa. Yeah, this is really interesting to talk about with you because I don't think other people that have been on our program yet have been able to synthesize the state of humanity to this extent, that you also, as you carry the humanities with you, even having Douglas Rushkoff recently on the show talking about Team Human, you synthesize the humanities in a way that really expresses what makes us human, and then on top of that, you also explain how this vast algorithmic bureaucracy is what is machining and roboticizing us in many ways, and potentially you're indicating to us kind of the decrease in humanity as the vast algorithmic bureaucracy increases. And so if we're starting to behave with the everything in a way that is roboticized, how do we then properly empathize? How do we then properly know how to engage with the child? How do we properly know how to engage with someone that is hurt or depressed? Or how do we engage with our loved ones that are going through a period of turmoil or potentially death? How do we have these deep human instincts that have been with us for hundreds of thousands, millions of years? Those are what makes us human. And it's just very beautiful the way that you speak about that human and that technology. I feel like Ron has a contribution.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, cool. All right, Piero, let's talk a bit on, you listed all of these things that you're obsessed with: rock music, art, history, also technology, having people understand why you care so much about music and why it makes us human, etc. Teach us about that.
So that's another aspect of the same thing. The other thing we miss, if we only look at technology and science, is the very history of why things happened. And so when my friend Aruna suggested I write a history of Silicon Valley, I've been in Silicon Valley since '83, okay? I thought it was an incredibly stupid idea. People in Silicon Valley don't want to read about the past. They just want to hear, where should I invest next? And people outside, in those days, Silicon Valley was not that famous. It was before the TV series, before the movies on Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg. But then I wrote it because I realized people miss the point. When people talk about Silicon Valley, they always talk about, well, first of all, they talk about the billionaires, who to me are an effect, not the cause. They're just the lucky ones. And second, if you start asking them why it happened here, in that valley, far away from New York, London, and so on, they start telling you for this reason, for that reason, for that reason. Those reasons, if those are the reasons, it should have happened near Wall Street or near the city of London. The money was there. The big electronic companies were there. Yes. All the winners of Nobel Prizes were there. And most importantly, governments were spending a lot there. So that doesn't work. Why the San Francisco Bay Area ended up being the technology hub of the world? We Google is number one in its field, Facebook is number one in its field, Intel is number one in its field, Airbnb, Uber, we have biotech, we have everything, and there was nothing here in the 50s. There were orchards. And people missed the point. They started listing factors coming from Europe. I mean, Germany was doing the same things 2 centuries ago. So that doesn't explain. Stanford doesn't explain. It was a small university back then. But if you look at the society, what was special about the Bay Area in the 50s and then in the 60s, and still is to some extent? Bunch of crazy people. You go back before technology became a big thing here, San Francisco Bay Area was famous as a refuge for crazy artists, for crazy writers. Not the best ones, the craziest ones. Crazy politicians, crazy whatever. It was a place where if you think different, you're cool. In the rest of the world, you are homeless and jobless, okay? This was a place where if you wear shorts and t-shirt, you are normal. Wall Street, you're fired, okay? So that was really unique about this area. Technology then came by accident because of the war. Who cares where it came from? The people here looked at the technology, did something different with it, okay? My favorite example is the internet that was invented by the DARPA, Department of Defense. It was a tool to survive the Cold War. Comes here, people use it as social media. And today it's called social media. We start saying, I was working in it when it was called ARPANET. And we were using it to organize parties and to discuss rock music. Okay? This is a place where these things happen. And then it turns out the whole world likes it, actually. If you use technology that way, the whole world, there's millions, especially young people, who like it. So if you don't mix the culture, the society, in the history of technology, you totally miss the point. You know, I read so many books about Silicon Valley that are totally ridiculous. They start by saying, oh, Silicon Valley has A, B, C. Man, those things, even in Italy we had them. Germany had them 10 times more. You know, you don't explain why only this place became so big. The rest of the world is trying to copy Silicon Valley. From Malaysia to China to Europe or whatever. They all fail. Why? The society is different. You can't have the same thing. And the government had nothing to do with it. I keep trying to explain to people around the world, Washington didn't even know the Silicon Valley existed. I imagine one day somebody told the president something about Silicon Valley. The president was reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, depending if it was the Democrat or Republican. And what's Silicon Valley? Okay? Washington was the last one to know that Silicon Valley was happening. It was the society that created the Silicon Valley. So when governments around the world try to build Silicon Valley, I laugh. The very starting point is wrong. Okay, you have to study society.
Yes.
And of course, rock music was very important. You know, there was rock music before there was Silicon Valley, not the other way around.
Do you have a favorite rock band, Piero, that you like?
I have many favorite rock bands.
Is it Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, AC/DC?
Those are great, but I start with the ones that were less famous. I start with the Velvet Underground, the most influential band ever.
Lou Reed.
In Europe, Faust, the Canterbury Band, Soft Machine, and so on. It's a long story.
Do you like Yes?
Yes, too, but there's better ones.
Okay.
So buy my book, 1,000 pages.
I will.
Thickest book ever written on rock music.
If you go and look at Piero's website, it's scaruffi.com. It's links in the bio below. If you go and look at it, you'll see 10,000 pages written with bios, reviews, lists, history, all on music. And that is only the start of his interest in music. Then he started telling you a bit on his profound synthesis on how Silicon Valley emerged, how then now we need to embed the human values into our technology as we move forward. And just having this lens of a real raw perspective on how Silicon Valley became what it did, and also how other places in the world are interested in that process is very fascinating. And however we end up embedding human values, these things that you care so much about, music, art, history, all these different humanities, into technology, how culture picked it up, like you were saying, when at the times of ARPANET, it's about surviving, that DARPA's making this, surviving through the Cold War, making communication systems. Now we take the 150 times that we grab this thing per day and instantly send people messages and video chats as the main. We brought our baseline up, and that's what we use it for. So it can be difficult sometimes to wrap only a 10-year-old or a 30-year-old mind into this past, into getting behind the eyes of humans that built civilization. Not only from 10,000 years ago agriculture, but all the way up to even DARPA and the ARPANET.
But if you like what's in that little device, if you think that's useful, you have to realize where it came from.
Yes.
And it doesn't just come from somebody building a computer. It really comes from all these crazy ideas floating around. And really, you miss. We can't write history anymore because we separated text science from the humanities. But think, okay, if you don't believe my story about Silicon Valley, fine, some people don't believe it. But let's go back 1 century. If you think today we have a lot of progress, that's another sign that you didn't study history. About between 1880 and 1920, in those 40 years, the car was invented.
Yeah.
The airplane was invented.
Yes.
The telephone became, I mean,
Correct.
it was invented a little earlier, but that's the age of the telephone. The phonograph was invented.
Yeah.
Cinema was invented.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hear the
Huge.
voice of somebody who is dead. You could call your mother and speak to your mother 3,000 kilometers away. Humans were flying.
Yeah.
All of this happened in those 40 years. In the same 40 years, relativity, quantum mechanics, skyscrapers are invented. Pretty much all the appliances you can think of, refrigerator, washing machine, whatever, were invented there. What was special about those 40 years? Guess what? Impressionism, expressionism, the literature. Just about every art you can think of had a boom. Guess what? Technology and science had a boom. So Renaissance, Italian Renaissance, I don't want to talk about Italy because it sounds boring, but Renaissance wasn't just Michelangelo, it was also about Leonardo and then Galileo,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Italy was a poor country in those days. It wasn't even a country, it was fractured in hundreds of small states fighting each other all the time with plagues, invasions from the north, invasions. Guess what? It has the Renaissance. Great artists, great science, great tech. So when the society is creative, the society is creative, period. In art, in tech, in science. And then you get a smartphone. Well, in those days you got some other technology. But so now that if we separated the two things, we can't even tell the story of how these things developed. These things developed because people were very creative. They were thinking a lot, you know, and then we got them. So if we remove the humanities, art, music, historians, sociologists from the picture, and we just have the tech and the science, we build these vast algorithmic societies that work very well. I mean, nobody will ever jaywalk again. Everybody will wear seatbelts, you know. But, you know, but I don't think that would have progress anymore. We would just become this stationary global machine that works very well.
Okay,
but it's boring.
We're also not quite obviously moving in just the direction of tech and science without any art and history and music and sociology, etc. We are embedding that as we go. But maybe even before I get there, it was too interesting when you said this, that it's the meshing of the art and the science and the technology in these time periods like the Renaissance, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Galileo. It was at the times of things like the 1880s to 1920s when this is so cool that it's everything from all of the commercial appliances to hearing dead people's voices in cinema to seeing humans fly to seeing skyscrapers emerge. Oh my gosh, that sounds like right now. It sounds like when we right now have 200,000 commercial flights happening per day, that we have this video chat device where we can see someone in China, hi, that when we now are using just zeros and ones
in this
for
period
banking.
of great creativity, it's incredible how quickly people adopt new technology. And you tend to think, oh, the smart people adopt new technology. No, ordinary people. Ordinary people go out and love radios and live phonographs and so on, and spread very quickly. In the book, I calculate, I think 49 years, because that's when, 49 years ago, we invented the first autonomous robot, okay? And then I calculate how many robots we have today, and I show in 49 years how many radios we had. 49 years after the invention of the radio, how many radios we had, how many airplanes we had. That was also amazing, how people adopt quickly things.
Interesting,
you know?
yeah. Because
So
in a period of 50 years, we went like boom with
so
radios,
it's the whole
with
society
cars,
that is
cell
really,
phones now.
the whole society wants something, and then it happens very quickly. But again, let's not forget that a lot of the motivation comes from all these crazy artists and crazy musicians,
Yes.
most of which will never make money. Okay, that's the bad thing.
That's true.
We only remember,
Yeah.
the history books I hate are the history books that only talk about the people who started wars, politicians, and the people who became rich. And they forget everybody else, you know. that's a pity.
But who were the ones that did the art, tech, and science that built all these cool inventions that we now have, and the adoption rates are just like boom, people want
everybody
them.
contributed, and even in Silicon Valley, a lot of the people who were engineers, but they were really working in the garage, and 2 or 3 became famous, but there were a lot of them working in the garage.
Absolutely.
Just for fun. Most of the great history of Silicon Valley are people who just wanted to build something for fun or for themselves, you know. And some of them became rich. 2 or 3 became rich. A lot of them didn't. But you have to think everybody. So even the engineers were actually not just engineers. They were engineers, but with crazy ideas. That's an artist, actually.
You'll enjoy this perspective on things, I think. This idea that it's something called like behind the groove for music. So for all of the artists that we see in today's spotlight, for all of the actors, for all of the prominent CEOs of these businesses that we see across the world, behind the groove is the thousands of people, these thousands of musicians that helped us, all of the audio engineers and all of the, in the technology industry, all the designers and the engineers on the software side of things as well. Just the people that help make the things that we use on a daily basis are behind the groove, and they're not necessarily getting that beautiful light. But it also comes from just people's wanting to contribute of something of meaning and value. I love that art, science, and tech, and then that in these different time periods has unleashed so much beauty into our world. But actually, what's interesting is that back in 1500 and back in early 1900, when these happened, that there were only like a couple million people to kind of get on, maybe tens of millions of people get on board. Now we see the billion get on board with certain things that are being made. And that number that's a lot of new training algorithms. Again, this transitioning us into the, are you quite realistic or optimistic? We're pessimistic. Where do you sit on the seeing where with the embedding human values into the technology that we make?
Well, so when I started the lasers in 2008, right? I was putting together artists and scientists. I was honestly worried. So that, actually, I was doing salons before that, so it started even earlier. I was worried also because education was so much STEM, science, technology, engineering, and not humanities, not
Gotta
art.
add the A, STEAM.
Right.
Add that art.
And then I lived in Silicon Valley, so all these engineers, suddenly Silicon Valley went from being everybody crazy engineer to being more corporate. So that was getting a little worried. Today I'm more optimistic because actually all this technology that we created, especially online, makes it very easy to mix art and tech. So you see, even AI, the people who are working in deep learning realize that with neural networks you can actually do really cool, I don't want to call them paintings, how you call them, these things, inceptionism.
Somebody at Google. Deep fakes?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, deep fakes are the bad application of it, but neural networks can generate
facial recognition.
Can generate these paintings that look like paintings and not paintings, but
yes.
surreal things. So it's become more natural, easier to use tech to do art, which means being creative.
Yeah.
So I can see a way that the two things will work together. So mildly optimistic. But at the end of the day, it's hard to predict how human society evolves, how our brain evolves. So I don't know. It just, again, my small contribution is to try to remind people. So the lasers have 4 talks, right? You've spoken at one, you've seen how it works. I have 4. I invite 4 speakers on 4 different disciplines, on 4 different topics. I make a point, no intersection, okay? 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. And a lot of the people who come, people who are not familiar with the format, come to listen to one of the 4. And they're probably annoyed that there are 3 other people talking. The best compliment I get is when somebody walks out of the room and tells me, Piero, I had no idea. Okay, he came to listen to you, Alan, And I force him to listen to the physicist, and I force him to listen to the painter.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Force him is nice way, huh?
Correct.
He goes home knowing, there's more than just Alan in this world.
Yes.
Or there's more than just physics, or there's more than just, he came for one thing.
And also, interestingly, when they leave and they go, now I see a new way how physics and painting are.
Right.
Yes.
So that's my contribution. Try to remind people there's a lot more, and then slowly people get it that all of these factors are important in shaping your world.
Yes.
And then it depends on you how much you want of this intersection. But technology does not happen in a vacuum. Your smartphone was not born in a vacuum.
Yes.
Was born in a society that had a lot of things. And in my opinion, luckily, this society had really a lot of stuff going on. The hippies, the punks later, Burning Man, there was so much going on. Survival research labs, I know many people are familiar with these things. All of this shaped the culture.
Survival research labs, those are the machines that destroy. Yeah? Is that them?
That's them.
Yeah.
In the 80s, San Francisco, a lot of empty warehouses. People were experimenting all sorts of free events. All of this shaped the minds here, So all these things is important. And again, a century ago, the Impressionist painters did the crazy things. Manet, I always confuse Manet and Monet, as a painting where the sky is curved. That's 2 or 3 years before Einstein comes out with relativity and space and curved space-time.
Yeah.
These things are important.
Yes.
Silly things. In the new book, I wrote these things because they're obvious to me, but they're not obvious if you only study technology. AI was invented in 1955. When did rock and roll start? 1955. Is it a coincidence? That year, for a number of reasons, people were ready for new ideas. But rock music comes from rhythm and blues from the 30s, 40s, whatever. AI comes from Gödel and some other people. But the names and the big phenomenon starts in 1955. What a coincidence, they start at the same time. Now, if you only study one, you will never notice the coincidence. There's no coincidence in history. That's a statement I made. There's no coincidence. If you look at the society, something was going on in society after World War II. Minds were open, minds were ready for things. Cinema was doing the juvenile delinquents, and lots of things going on in art. Abstract art was being born and so on. Guess what? Rock and roll is born, AI is born the same year. Okay, it's in my opinion, you can't have one without the other. If you think there's some benefit from this one, you can't ignore that it's the product of a society that was doing a lot of creative things. You remove all the creative things, I don't know what you get, but I don't think I would like it.
Because we were on the panel with Maya, and Alicia is making music, artificially intelligent composition of music. And when that's happening, and it can go through billions of permutations in the span of just a couple of hours, where humans had to take decades to be able to do. And when we do that same thing with painting, and that same thing with sculpting, and that same thing with all different styles of music and book writing and article writing, and what happens then with the humanities when a machine that is passing the Turing test is able to empathize with me as a patient at a clinic better than a nurse potentially can? That what is left, and where is the humanity then? Is this the next evolution, Piero? Is this artificial general intelligence the next evolution that we're supposed to go to?
I wish this was true. It's true only in Hollywood movies. Unfortunately, what I see is the opposite. It's us forced to live with incredibly stupid machines. When you buy a ticket from the machine, you are forced to behave like a machine. You can't talk to the machine. You can't just tell the machine, hey, I want to go to Berkeley. I need to arrive at 9 a.m.
Yeah, but not, you're saying not,
you have to
not
enter.
Not yet. Then it goes, okay, Google, buy me a ticket to San Mateo on the Caltrain.
Yeah, but you have to simplify the sentence. You have to simplify. Alexa, turn on the light. That's where we are.
Yeah.
we are coexisting with incredibly stupid machines, and that's scary. You know, I want the machines to adapt to us, not vice versa.
Voice is that. Voice is machines adapting to humans. We're no longer going to press these meat sticks on the keyboards and stuff. We're going to use voice. Yeah. Piero, spatial intelligence, spatial design, making CAD inside
we're going
of
to use voice, but see, these things have been tried. 20 years ago, I was in Singapore, and they were trying this elevator voice activated. You say 2, it goes to the second floor. Unfortunately, if I'm having a conversation with you and I use the word 2, it will go to the second floor. Okay? Now we have hotels. I saw a hotel in China where you walk in. By the way, there's a robot that takes you to the hotel. You walk into the elevator. You walk into the elevator. The elevator automatically goes to your room because it senses the card.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah, unfortunately, when I wanted to go visit my friend at another floor, I couldn't go there.
Interesting.
Because the elevator only takes you to your floor, to the first floor.
Yes.
So we are introducing a lot of incredibly stupid machines, and we have to deal with them.
Well, because this is the learning curve, just like when the humans were dying when they were first trying to fly airplanes. Just like when they were dying when they were first transplanting organs into human bodies.
See, in a sense, even the fasten seatbelts, I do fasten seatbelts on the highway, but I would like to have the freedom to decide when it makes sense. If I get in my car and I'm just moving it from the driveway to the street,
of course, doesn't make sense.
The car goes beep, beep, beep. I cannot explain to the car that I'm not doing anything dangerous. There's nobody around, okay? Yeah. So I'm afraid that the world that is coming right now, and probably in the foreseeable future, is a world that is incredibly stupid machine, and we have to live with them.
Until it learns.
And it's scary to see the younger generations that accept it passively. Okay, I can see advantages in using the old VHS tape over the DVD, certainly over the live streaming that sometimes stops suddenly in the middle of what I'm watching. The younger generation has never seen the VHS tape. It doesn't know that I can rewind it exactly to the scene I want to see.
Yes.
Okay? We miss something there. Okay? So what is scary is that we are adapting to dumb machines. Okay? If the very intelligent machines come, it will just be another pet. We've always had intelligence around us that is not human. Dogs can do things you cannot do.
Yes, correct.
My favorite example is the bat. The bat can fly in the dark, can catch insects, and can land upside down on the ceiling. Yes. Can you do that?
Yes.
So, if you bring another intelligence in the picture, okay, what's wrong with that? I lived with bats, I lived with dogs, I lived with cats. Some of them are dangerous, and we live with lions and tigers. We survived. We'll survive intelligent machines. I'm more afraid of the opposite, of millions of very stupid machines that force me to do stupid things, like I've done this morning to buy the ticket, the BART ticket. You know, you have to deduct money, and then you have to add, and then you have to press the right button.
Okay, but you're making fun of all the stupid aspects of the tech. This is like looking at all of the lame ways that humans used to transit. Oh, it used to be such a hassle to use the Ford Model T. Now look, we have these amazing cars that have cruise control and yada yada. So this is just the evolution of what we do with the technology that we engage with, is that it gets better over time as we use it. We go through the processes of the machines being a little stupider, then they become a little smarter over time, then even smarter. For example, Piero, we want you to be a polymath longer, to teach people longer, to have more life so you can creatively express yourself. Mm-hmm. But the way to do that is to be able to monitor things like your entire biometrics and have preventative healthcare. Mm-hmm. These are very important things, yeah. But the machine will make mistakes to start.
I said from the beginning that we underestimate all the value we get from technology. I'm just saying, in the near future, if you ask me, indirectly you are basically pointing to a future where machines are very intelligent. Yes. And I was telling you, the danger I see is the opposite. I see a future, certainly a near future, but possibly also a long-term future, of stupid machines, where we coexist with stupid machines and we have to adapt to their stupidity.
But Piero,
I'm not
what about
let me repeat one important point.
Yeah.
I am not afraid of a very intelligent machine, just like I'm not afraid of a very intelligent cat. It's another intelligence that lives on this planet, and actually will stimulate my intelligence, will force me to be
That's right.
more intelligent.
Yes.
Just like
Yes.
we had to be more intelligent of the tiger to survive in the caves.
Yes, yes.
I'm afraid of a world where we put so many stupid machines and we have to live with them, and we start behaving like a stupid machine. That's all I'm saying.
That's an interesting
Sometimes
point.
the most dangerous place you can find yourself in is being the smartest person in a room full of dumb people. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you take the example that
Piero's
you're
a very
painting,
intelligent man, and
I agree.
wear your seatbelt, Piero, all the time,
This is
even when
very
you're just
important.
moving it
I'm
from
not.
the
I'm not. I'm not
driveway to
very
the
intelligent.
street.
I'm just trying to stay as intelligent as I am, not go lower.
So Piero illustrates this interesting point that we could potentially get to with machine intelligence, where the machines that we surround ourselves with are not actually completely intelligently optimized in the environment that we're in. This whole Internet of Things era, if some of the things are actually making us literally stupider because it's harder to engage with them in the process of them learning and growing with them. Yet, I also think that there is a very interesting amount of, we need a hefty dose of humility, because I think we're hubristic. We are overly self-confident, just like we were that, oh, the earth is the center of the universe. No, it wasn't. And just like right now, we say, oh, technology is not the next evolution. I think, again, we just need a hefty dose of humility and understand that the ability to crunch these trillions of variables simultaneously about your biometrics and give you preventative medicine is better than you or any doctor ever, or even 8 billion minds all thinking at the same time, could potentially do. And that things like that give us some humility, and eventually the Internet of Things environment, eventually all of that, hopefully, will be at the successful levels with the right engineers, designers, artists.
Yeah, unfortunately,
etc.
see, eventually, it's the eventually that scares me, because in the short term and even in the long term, I'm afraid machines will remain pretty stupid. And the reason is that we haven't found a way to give machines common sense. See, even a cat and a mouse have common sense.
Do you believe there's something among us that wants to dumb us down, Piero? Because that's what I fear. I fear that we have to be careful with who's programming artificial intelligence. It's safe to say you don't have faith in AI, that machines will always be dumb, but there might be something behind that.
Yeah, but
that wants us to be controlled and dumb and not critical thinkers.
Yeah,
and this is something that people don't talk about.
But that's what is happening, right? That's how technology is being used. And
What is behind it, though? Ron's asking what is behind it.
The number one
We
application.
don't know who's behind it. Don't you think if we knew who was behind it, we'd do something about it?
The number one application of AI so far, most successful application of AI, is making you buy things you don't need. You know, that's how the number one use of this new algorithm is making you buy things you don't need. You know, all these recommendation algorithms. So, you know, and then there's, you know, of course, governments use technology to build the vast algorithmic bureaucracy. So, you know, but it's the human intelligence behind this. It's really the human intelligence that we're talking about. The machines are, again, it's something that very few people say. I'm not afraid of an intelligent machine, a really intelligent machine, with a machine that I can have this conversation with. What's wrong with that? It's just another intelligence on the planet. And I think it will be different from us. I'm skeptic that will happen anytime soon, because we haven't found a way to equip machines with common sense. So the self-driving car is rapidly becoming a joke. It's the self-crashing car. And there are very few self-driving cars, and already 3 people died because of in Arizona, they throw stones at the self-driving car.
But don't nitpick your data points, though, because you can also pick the data points where the vehicle is seeing better in the fog, or it's making an advanced decision about swerving out of the way.
Don't tell him what to do. He's a very smart man.
I know, but you can also tell when someone is not doing nuance.
If you just give me another device in my car while I'm driving that helps me, that warns me about dangers, whatever, I'm very happy. But if you give me a self-driving car, which means now the car is in charge of driving by itself in real traffic, That's scary. That car has no common sense. So it will make mistakes that we don't make. We make many mistakes. My favorite example is just face recognition. If there's a crowd and I see somebody who looks like you, I may go, hey, Alan. Oh, it wasn't Alan.
Yes.
But that's a legitimate mistake. We have machines that look at a face and say, this is a refrigerator. That's not a legitimate mistake. So I'm scared of that machine. It makes that mistake only once in a million. I make my mistakes once in 10 times, okay? Fine, but mine are legitimate mistakes. I was telling a friend as we were hiking, we thought there was...
with your permits, of course.
With my permit. We thought that there was a bear and it was a tree. And he said a machine would never make the mistake. And then I thought, right, but I would not trust hiking with a machine that doesn't make that mistake, because that could be a bear. I want a machine that makes the same mistake I make and tells me, hey, Piero, there could be a bear. Okay? It's not a bear, it's a tree. My body didn't, so I trust my body, okay?
Yes.
So common sense is hard to quantify.
Yes, it is very hard to quantify.
But that's the thing that I still see missing in machines. And until somebody shows me a machine with common sense, I don't believe we have intelligent machines coming. We have stupid machines coming. And the more we give them, the more afraid I am, okay? That's my point.
That's a very interesting point on the common sense.
I've been in AI since 1983.
Yes, of course. This is why when we break down the nuance with guests on the show, it's super important to hear the edge of knowledge that the guest has been experiencing for a long period of time. I like how you talk about the lack of common sense, the fact that you want it to make the mistake. Is that a bear? We want to. That's a very interesting point, and I think there's a lot of creativity that's being explored with great amounts of permutation capacity that humans can't yet, and we see it happening in Go, we see it happening in chess and Jeopardy and Alpha Star, and there's a bunch of Alpha Zero, and it's just very interesting to see it unfolding. And hopefully by 2100 there will be some smarter machines. Let's say. Let's hope for that.
Oh, Piero, that's great. 2100. Only how many years?
I don't know. Ray Kurzweil and actually a lot of the leading artificial intelligence scientists on the planet actually think that we'll get to an artificial general intelligence. The average is 2047 is their current average prediction,
if they're still alive, they will just change the definition of intelligence. That's the easier way to declare victory. Mission accomplished. You just change the definition.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Piero, there's so much wisdom to still to ask you questions and still learn from you on the show. The couple quick questions on the way out that we want to ask you. Okay, you talk so much on art, science, and tech mixed together. How can we best absorb that? You know, you have your laser talks, and that's going on in 38 cities, everyone. There have been over 1,000 talks delivered, so you can find all that information in the links below. That's a great place to get this art, science, and tech mix, and your last festival and stuff. But how can one, and as an adult and also teaching kids, embody this mentality of art, science, and tech as something that they move themselves into the future with?
I don't know.
What would be a good principle to recommend?
Everybody's different. I don't know. It's each life story is different. I think if you're curious, it should come natural. You know, the problem is sometimes you don't have the opportunity. So
exactly.
Mine is a small contribution. As you know, the lasers and the last festival are hobbies, right? They're not my full-time job. It's much more contribution to give you the opportunity to people to learn more about this.
Exactly.
I think there should be a lot more free talks.
Agreed.
So I like that Stanford, UC Berkeley have so many open events where anybody can go.
Yeah.
I can only encourage people to go to events, free events, read books. There's a lot of good books.
That's right.
It's
curiosity,
it's hard to tell.
and then having the time.
Yeah, and my curiosity, not somebody else's curiosity. You know, somebody else would invite a different speaker to the show.
Yes.
So it's really young people ask me this question a lot, and I really don't know. I really don't know the answer. just be curious.
Be curious, yeah, towards whatever is passionately grabbing you. How about a core driving principle of your life?
Don't be afraid of new ideas. You know, I tend to see new ideas as new opportunities. Study history also. Study history. That's very important. My God. I don't know if history repeats itself or never repeats itself. This is an endless discussion.
Yes.
But you learn a lot by studying history. It really opens your mind a lot about everything. You know, you see everything with different eyes.
Even if there's a lie within our history?
Yeah, the history is always that needs to be interpreted. But the more you study history, the more you get facts, and these facts form your own opinion, honestly. So,
Yes.
of course, I see where Ron is going.
Totally.
I mean, facts can be distorted, some facts can be hidden, that's the good historian is the historian who digs up the facts that have been swept under the carpet.
Yes.
And then there's new relevance to things that have been forgotten.
That's the archaeology. I love that side of things, because there's so many still artifacts and data points that are being disappearing from human civilization.
Very recent history. I mean, now that the Soviet archives are open, it's amazing how different the Soviet Union looks like. You know,
interesting.
We look worse, by the way, because they were not as evil as we thought. And so even recent history you can find can make you think differently.
That may become a reoccurring theme about the United States, is that the places that we fought against may not have been as evil as potentially.
And some of our friends were probably more evil, but that's not surprising.
That's true.
That's not surprising, right? Yes. We tend to like friends, excuse actions of friends and demonize the actions of enemies. That's not
correct. That's okay. And then last two. Wouldn't be simulation if we didn't ask you. Are we in a simulation?
Nah, I don't think so.
Why?
Well, you have to show me. This is like asking, does God exist? Show me God, then I'll say yes. Show me evidence of the simulation, I'll say yes. Until the day, I don't think so.
Okay, I will build the simulation out and show you. Fast forward 13.8 billion years and show you we're here. Okay, and how about, last question is, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Thing, not people.
Pick.
Otherwise, I have to answer my wife. People are included. If you're just talking about things in the universe, probably I still think the same way I thought when I was a child. Stars. In those days I didn't know what stars are, but I was fascinated.
Yes.
I think still if you look at the stars, focus on what's up there, it's scary, but it's also somehow exhilarating, right?
Yeah, and dwarfing of the ego, so much good from that, yes.
And it's interesting to think, what do we have in common with other planets?
Yes.
And probably the one thing we have in common is that everybody looks at the stars, and yeah, so one thing we have in common with any other sentient being, right?
And that the math and physics in those areas is also likely being computed similarly.
That I would love to meet people from another planet and see if they develop the same kind of science,
faculties with their perception and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For another conversation, Piero, holy cow, this has been super filled with lots of awesome saturation, polymathic saturation. I love it. Thank you for coming on to the show and joining us, Piero. This has been super pleasure.
Very good question.
Super pleasure. I mean, your sessions with you are a blessing, and I hope others feel this way too. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We greatly appreciate you. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what you were thinking about the conversation. Also, check out Piero's links below. Go and check them out. Go to a laser talk near you. Check out Scaruffi.com. See what's on there. Check out the music. Go and have more conversations about art, about tech, about science around you, and inspire more people to build the future. Everyone, support artists and entrepreneurs that you believe in. And our links are below as well. And much love. Thank you, Ron, for producing and directing. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah. And we'll have to have a Jinx on this show soon, okay? Okay, good. All right, much love, everyone. We'll see you soon. Peace.